Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. I'll start this one right off the top with an apology for being so late with this one. I did a whole bunch of recordings back in August and had a bunch laid out for the future. And then I race directed for the X-Red Rocks, and I've just been buried in this house build here between Haley and Ketchum, trying to get my family out of the trailer that we've lived in for the last 5 months since before the X-Alps, since actually the day after my crash back in May, and then X-Alps, and then back here. So, and that whole time we haven't had internet or even cell service at the job site. So it's been really tricky to record and set up recording. So I apologize for being late with this one. We will get back on schedule as always. And my guest today is Eduardo Garza, a really good friend of mine, Team Mexico in the last 2 X-Alps. He's had really good races in both, and really awesome performance this year. He was kind of hanging tight with the middle of the crew, and then had a breakout flight, took a totally different path, went north like Kriegel did, I think a day or two before him, and really made it work and made it through Piz Palu and to come in 14th place. And we talk a lot about the race. This is basically dedicated to his thoughts on the race 4 months post-race, which is fun. I think we all go through a little bit of post-race trauma, depending on what's next and what's in the future. And he and I are both pretty firmly in the camp of not doing it again. So I wanted to ask him about that. But we get into his experience, which was all good, and talked a lot about the weather and the wind and some of the scary stuff that we had to deal with this year. And those of you who are fans of the race, I think will really enjoy it. Eduardo's got a great attitude. He's an awesome pilot. I think this year he was first of the non-Europeans, which I've gotten a couple times in my X-Alps. And, it's just tough to go do battle with the Euros. They got a massive home field advantage. And so we talk about that. But we had a lot of fun with this, a lot of laughs, and I think you're going to enjoy it. We talked about the training quite a bit as well. He and I both have the same trainer, Ben Abruzzo, who's also supported me and been really integral to my team since the beginning, since the 2015 race. So enjoy this talk with Eduardo Garza. Cheers. Eduardo, thanks for taking this last minute invite. I know you've been buried in work. I think the last time I saw you, we were turning circles in Chelan, which sounds like that's a little more fun than what's going on in your world right now. What are you and Bianca up to? What's happening out on the East Coast?
Well, first of all, Gavin, thank you very much for the invite. This is an honor, really, because I really love what you have been doing with the podcast. So it's awesome to be here chatting with you.
Thank you.
So here at the East Coast, we're trying to fly as much as possible, actually. Weather has not been cooperating that much, really, lately. But yeah, staying in the air as much as possible.
Cool. And tell the audience what you do, because a lot of people that follow the X-Alps obviously know you from that, and you've done the X-Peer a couple times, and this was your second X-Alps. But what's your business? What's your background that's not related to flying? How do you pay for flying? I should ask it that way.
I think that's a very good question, actually. I'm an engineer. I'm a mechanical electrical engineer. And I work for a manufacturing company that makes fiber optic cables for telecommunications. So this is an office job.
I just got fiber optic brought to my house.
There you go.
Yeah, so you make the stuff that made this possible in some ways. I haven't had internet for the last 5 months, and I tell you, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, so we build infrastructure exactly for all the Netflixes and videos, etc. So it's a very demanding job, and trying to marry that with paragliding has really been a struggle, I should say, lately.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is how did the training look this year? Did anything change? Because we both have the same trainer. We both use Ben Abruzzo. I've used him for all 4 of mine, and you've been using him for years now, and using him for your first X-Alps in 2019, and which you did really well at as well as this one. So I wanted to ask you what changed, but one of the big differences I always think about you and always feel for you, in some ways when we look at the top 10 this year of the X-Alps, they're all what I would consider professional pilots. This is what they do, and they get paid to do it, and that's their job. And you're one of the few actually in the race who you have to find the time outside of a full-time job to prepare for the race. And I always feel like I've got a lot of luxury in that I can just focus on the training going into it. I mean, I have my job and my work, but it's not a 9 to 5 like you've got. And it must be incredibly hard to find the time. I mean, that's one of the reasons I decided I'm not doing another XOps. It's not just the risk and everything I put out in that article. It's the time, it's the dedication to this, this 12 days that goes into the year in advance. That must be really tough with what you do.
Totally agree. I couldn't agree more, Gavin. That is where the real struggle, marrying my profession as an engineer with preparing for something as large and involved as the XOps comes from. Normally, in my day, when I am training for the XOps, you're talking about starting training at 6 to 7 p.m. So you work a full day, 8 hours. Then you start training 6 or 7 p.m. And as you know, with Ben, it is not exactly a walk in the park.
No, it's no joke, man.
He really tries to destroy your body because as Nelson, actually, I was talking with Nelson the Freeman before my first race, and he said, you either go to war before the race or during the race. So if you go to war before the race, you're going to enjoy it. Otherwise, during the race, you're going to be destroyed. So I try to put in as much effort and time before the race. And this time around, since you asked about the changes, I asked Ben to increase the volume. Not substantially, because I really cannot afford to be training for 2-3 hours every single weekday. Because in addition, obviously, you have the weekends, which are normally 6 to 7 hours. And in addition to that, where I live, there's really not very high mountains. So 70% of the vertical meters that I did in training were done on a 200-meter hill that you cannot fly off.
Oh my God. So you're just going up, down, up, down. You're just yo-yoing all day.
Up and down, up and down. You can ask Ben for some of the tracks. It's just like a scratchy line up and down that incline. I know every single rock, every single tree, even by name.
Hello, Fred. Very disappointed to see you again.
I know. Yeah, so it's really, really challenging. We have taller mountains if I drive between an hour and a half and 2 hours, but that's not something I can do during weekdays because I'm working. So that's where the challenge.
Yeah, man, I see your posts. I follow you on Instagram, obviously, and I talk to Ben regularly every day, and I see your posts of snowshoeing in the fog and the ice, and and I get to go out and and ski tour. That's my training, is going out and really having fun and getting a lot of vertical and doing all the hell that he puts us through. But you're in a much more challenging zone to get the vertical and to get hats off to you, man. I mean, because you're obviously coming in super fit.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yes, definitely challenging. And that's why I'm always trying to find an edge. How can I compete against some of the best hike and fly athletes in the world with limited time and limited resources in terms of, the vertical, and also the fact that we're in America, which is a huge, I think, disadvantage, just because we are not in tune or flying with the weather conditions or the valley systems that are a world of difference when it comes to staying in the air and just making easy kilometers, for example. We don't have that second, like, nature knowledge that comes with living in the Alps. So it's definitely challenging, but I have really appreciated that challenge. And that's why every time that we do it, or we finish in a decent position, is really rewarding.
Yeah, that really hit me in 2019. Not so much this time because it just seemed like the weather this time was so brutal, man. It was just so bad, and all of it was so bad, and still very fun. And we flew every day. It was, fascinating. I think what I was just talking to Ben. I told you I was talking to Ben earlier today, and the thing that this is always the time. It's been 4 months since the end of the race. And this is always the time where it really starts to hit me that to not do another one is starts to feel really scary. I don't know. I don't. That's not the right word. It's just that race puts you in places with your team that you're never ever going to be able to replicate. And I don't mean just locations. I don't mean uh, places in terms of that spot on top of that mountain. I mean places emotionally and physically and the beauty, all of it. It's the intensity of the experience that I can't replicate. I know I can't replicate it. If Ben and I got together and went and did a Volbiv in the Alps, that's going to be really fun and very rewarding, but it's not going to be the same. You're not going to get out of bed and go do the stuff that we do day after day after day. And there's something very special about that. And yeah, so let me turn that into a question now that you've had this time of reflection. I did see you very briefly at the awards. You had a really bitchin' end to that race. You made some awesome moves. You had an incredible move to the north, and then that put you nicely in position to get Pispaloo, turn point, and you leapfrogged a bunch of people. Had a really good end of the race. And so, you, like all of us at the end, are kind of on a cloud nine at the awards, but also, I saw the same look in your eyes that I did with everybody, which was kind of, Jesus, that was intense. I'm sure it was the same look you saw in me. You're exhausted, you're thrilled, you're excited to be alive, or at least I was. But what have you had? What's been the reflection since? What are the kind of emotional roller coasters, if you've had any? I know I have since then. What do you kind of go through? And because now you've done it twice, you're a proper veteran. I'm curious because I think we each have our own unique experiences after the race, and that's always after has been really tough for me.
Gavin, I agree with you that after a few months pass after the race, you forget about the painful bits and you start thinking, oh, this would be really cool to do again, right?
Yeah.
And certainly after this race, after all the weather and everything that happened, you put it in perspective. But to be honest, I don't regret a thing. And this reminds me a lot about a book I read, and most likely you're familiar with it. It's How to Get in Flow, and it's written by this now famous person, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure I butchered
Studied
that
him a
last
lot.
name, by the way, so I apologize.
No, that was good.
But
Yeah.
in this book, he has a quote that says, "The best moments in our lives are not when we are passive or doing nothing, just relaxing. That's not where your best moment is going to be. Your best moment in your life will happen when your body or your mind or both are stretched to its limits, trying to accomplish something that is difficult and worthwhile." So I think that we accomplished that. So this goes down in my experience as something that uh, I'm going to remember for the rest of my days. And
Yeah.
it's one of the best moments in my life, just because we pushed the limits, we passed the limits, and we're still here.
Yeah. 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 I don't know if you saw that recent article I wrote in Cross Country about, I haven't actually seen it, but Ben said it's out, about this being my last one. You and I talked about it briefly at the awards that night. Geez, man, could we do it again? I really felt like the risk was absurd this year. And we're all in different places in the course. I mean, I know, Aaron Duragati said that he had many times where he thought it was definitely life threatening. What he was doing was way beyond what even he trains for. And as you know, he trains in some awfully nasty stuff, because he wants to. He's pretty fearless. Uh, but I felt like, so we were all in different positions, but I specifically remember the day where Lori, threw her reserve. They didn't put this anywhere in the media. They don't talk about bad stuff in the X Alps, but she took off basically with you and Cody and a couple others from Lermoos that day, and about the same time. I don't know exactly. I got there later that day, and you guys were, from my perspective on the ground at Lermoos, we're flying in a full on lightning storm, and it was vicious. The sky was insane. I mean, it wasn't. Revis was kind of like, yeah, man, yeah, I think you should, you could probably get up there and make it work. Man, I don't know. I think it might be a good time to just walk for a bit. And that was the day that Lori, went parachutal because of the rain, through a reserve to, because she was coming down on high tension power lines, and you were making it work that day in the air. But man, it looked dicey. And it was just, the next day and the next day and the next day, I flew in stuff that looked just like that. It was just
Right.
over and over and over again. We were in just vicious weather, really traumatizing. But it wasn't, but it's weird. It would be traumatizing if we were just normally flying, but it wasn't, it's not traumatizing because you're in the race. It's like, yeah, bring it. But what do you think? I mean, is it acceptable? I mean, when you finished the race, when you were done, I mean, because that day at the awards, you were kind of, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do this again. I'd be curious, where are you sitting on it now? Are you still thinking that? Or are you thinking, yeah, better do it once more?
I'm still thinking that. I don't think I'm doing it again. Just for a
Right.
simple reason,
Interesting.
because it's just too much time that you need to invest. And right now, I don't have the time, and I did it twice already, so pretty much check. But
Yeah.
not a lot about the risk though. It's more about the stress that went into preparing for a race with COVID times, and again with
Yeah, that sucked.
that was the worst, because I didn't have
Yeah.
any
Not
plane
knowing.
tickets a month prior to the race. So there was a lot of preparation at the end that had to go through. So the only way that I would do this again is if I live in the Alps. There's no other way.
Yeah.
So that's a definite. Now, regarding risk, let's just be truthful. You cannot play it conservative
Yeah.
and still try to finish in the top 10, top 15, not even top 20 if you play it conservatively.
Yeah.
You have to risk it. You have to fly. If you have 60 km/h winds from the north and you're launching south, you have to manage. That's I
Yeah.
think what you have to do every single day. Uh, you mentioned the day that I flew with Cody, with Theo, Laurie, and Nicola, actually, from Lermoos. I remember that day vividly, because we were at launch together, and Laurie launches first, and she just goes up. Like, okay, so it's working, it's perfect, beautiful. At this point, we didn't know if we were going to take the northern route or the southern route or southwestern route through the
Yeah.
Albert Pass. So I told my team, I'm going to make the decision once I'm in the air. So I launched at the end because I was missing a cable. So there's four gliders in the air, everyone getting really tall. So when I launch and I pass the Grubigstein Peak and I see to the north, it's pretty much like you described. It was just nastiness, lower cloud base. There was darkness in the valleys. There was it was a dark omen on the north. So you know what? Decision made. We're going south. And actually, to the south, it was pretty nice. For the beginning, it was mellow, 2 meters per second. We just scratching the peaks. I was with, at this point, I didn't see Cody, which later I learned that he had taken the northern route. So he was going towards the darkness. So I couldn't figure that out. But Theo and Nicola were team flying with me. So we got to a point in Imst that someone flipped the switch. It's from mellow conditions to nuclear conditions. So I'm in a thermal.
Wow.
I'm entering this thermal, and I'm gladly going up. But I remember that we have airspace on top, right? So
Yeah.
um, Nicola and Theo are around me, and they start spiraling. So like, okay,
That's where is that where Theo got his airspace
that's
violation, or
where
no? That was
Nicola
near
actually.
Sion.
That
Nicola,
Yeah,
yeah,
Nicola got his
right,
airspace there. So
yeah.
I start spiraling as well, lightly first, and I'm still going up. So now I crank the spiral even more, and I'm still going up. So I'm from 300 meters now. I'm 200 meters
Whoa.
from airspace. It's like this is not letting up. So now I have to crank whole spiral, full G-force, and unfortunately, I am still going up. So at this point,
Holy smokes.
it's just so much noise just going up from the vario and also now from the airspace alarms that I just keep the spiral. But uh, I get to a point where now I get sucked into the cloud. So now I don't know where I am. And as you know, that area is big peaks everywhere.
Yeah.
So I have all this noise around me. I don't know if I'm in airspace, and I'm still cranking probably 5 Gs. And when I think that nothing else can go wrong, I hear a loud snap, but it was more of a crack. I sink into the harness and I feel a sharp pain on my lower back. It's like, now I'm in trouble because something is happening with my harness now. And I cannot keep this G force going on for so much longer until I
Whoa.
fall from the sky.
You broke your harness?
The harness, yes, because of the G force, it was so nasty. The thermal was just
Holy shit.
bouncing me around. And this is not a harness problem. This is a conditions that I was in cranking the spiral problem.
Jeez.
So probably I was 2 minutes, or it seemed like forever, but I think it was more like probably 30 seconds. But I get dumped finally behind the mountain. So I get released from this monster thermal and I know where I am now. Fortunately, I didn't spiral into a peak. Uh, so now that I see where I am, I push forward. And the crazy thing is, and this is what DX Alps does to you, you just keep flying. You're probably shaking a little
Yeah.
bit. You're scared. You're thinking that, but you're thinking, where can I get my next climb so I don't have to land and keep on hiking? So, and after that, we got downwards in the Arborg Pass with a west wind. So I land Middle Hill, and then we just walked and walked and walked and walked. But yeah, that day was definitely a scary one. And by the way,
Crazy.
regarding the harness, I thought it was the air bladder that had burst, but no, it
Yeah.
was one of the rods in the bag that had broken. So that was just pretty much sticking out. But it was all, it was still flyable, obviously. But
Yeah.
obviously, it was all wobbly and not proper for control.
So you were able to just fix that on the fly? Did you have a spare or something? Or
What I did was I shifted my body, so it was not affecting me or too much for my flying. And in the air, I called my team and said, "You know what, guys, I need a new harness." So, uh, next flight, that was all set. That was
yeah. Yeah.
it.
It's funny what we do in the air, isn't it? You do all kinds of stuff up there that normally it'd be yeah, it's I have some pretty amazing conversations with Revis while I'm cruising around in the chaos sometimes. Where the hell am I? Um, yeah. So when you look back, and maybe this was the same at the end of the race or now, but what was when you think about the X Alps, do you have a standout? Uh, what was the best experience that you had in those 12 days during the race?
Best experience. I have many really good experiences uh, that you can catalog differently, because when you see people go out and greet you and help you and feed you
Mm,
and try to help you in any way they can, and they have a huge smile on their face, and you have just walked 80 kilometers and you are devastated physically, but you still find the energy to, you feed from their energy, and now you feel great and nothing bad has happened, and it's all amazing, it's all great. So I had a few experiences like that. I remember in Verbier, so Yael's hometown. I
yeah.
land down in Verbier, a little bit lower, and this guy comes and greets me like, "Oh, you're ex-Alps, okay, yeah, yeah." I'll show you the way. You can just hike here, and then you can launch, and you can keep going down the road. I go, okay, sounds good. So we keep hiking, and then more people start coming. Actually, his brother starts coming. So he's like, okay, I'll take you. I can take it from here. I'm the pretty much a relay. So we'll go up this road here, and you'll get to launch in about 30 minutes. I don't think you can do it today, but we'll find you a place to sleep. No worries. I'm like, all right. Next thing I know, this person's father, and I believe his name, the guy who actually hiked with me, is Joshua. And I'm sorry if that's not the name, but Joshua's father comes out with the biggest cowbell that I've seen, and he's cranking it, bang, 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 bang. He's super excited, and he's giving me tea, he's giving me food. He's like, anything else, if your team is not coming, because I think that they are a little bit far away, because because they were watching the race, and they knew that I had launched from Mont Blanc on the Col d'Enclave, which I think that you flew from the same one. Say crossing Mont Blanc. So Jason had hiked with me, and he couldn't launch because he had crazily. This is why we called him the Mule. His nickname was the Mule. He was carrying two backpacks, his wing and then another backpack with winter gear because it was pretty cold, and also rain gear because it was thunderstorms rolling through. So he couldn't fly with that. So he had to walk down. So they were like 3 or 4 hours behind me. And so I get to the top, and we go to this little restaurant, and they find us an actual connection for the Tesla, because our other car was a Tesla, and we just ran out of juice. So they didn't only find that, but they brought us, beer and food. The father actually cooked everything. It was it was a really, really good meal. So I have really, really good memories from that day, just because of how the people behaved with us. And well, part of the reason was that no one went through there. It was only Maurer.
Yeah.
And they were like, Maurer came through here, but he was 1,000 meters above us.
A typical story about Maurer.
Yes, I
get those along
so.
the way. Yeah, Maurer came through here 2 days ago.
Yeah, we know. No, but they were super cool. They were super cool. So on that, let's say, category of people, it's always very good stories from the 2019 race and from the 2021 race. The people are amazing in the Alps. They really follow the race, so I love that. Now, from a flying perspective, partly why I do this race is I love those mountains. I'm constantly impressed by what I see. So in this race, we flew in areas that I had no idea that they were so beautiful. Like, for example, after Santis, that you fly south, and now you have to launch and cross Valence in order to get to Clausen Pass. Yeah. Just flying that area, I had never seen it before. I was impressed. I even did a few turns just to, to gather everything, take some videos, pictures, etc. And then I kept going because it was just so beautiful. Same thing happened with the backside of Innsbruck, north of Innsbruck, flying from Aachen towards Lermos, towards Garmisch, let's say. So I flew the southern part. I didn't take the smaller mountains in the north. I was just impressed at this wall that just appeared when I rounded a corner, probably 800 meters high, completely vertical, extending for 10 kilometers. I was just dumbfounded of such beauty, so many days like those, just looking at the sights, it's just amazing. So that's another category.
Yeah, it's a stunning place to have that kind of event. It really is terrific. I mean, just the opportunities for top landing and side hill landing and relaunching, and you can just put it down almost anywhere, launch anywhere, and basically if you go up, you're going to find something that works. And it's a labyrinth too. This time when I got to Lermoos this year, you guys had just gotten in the air, and we made the call that it'd probably be better to walk, and I just started walking down the road that was on the north side of where you were, and that leads to the valley that leads up to the Worth Pass, which was what was kind of my plan A. Before the race, you look at all the routes, and that was kind of what I was planning to go through, and I had no idea until that night just turned into a catastrophe of epic fun. It was, and I use catastrophe specifically because it was, I walked, and then we tried to, I found this launch in the ski area that was really dicey getting off. I had to run down. It was completely cross and all covered around in trees, and just a classic X-Alps experience. It was really fun. And then I literally went about a kilometer, and, the winds just were totally opposite of what we wanted. And, so I spent all this time going uphill and went nowhere, which had been at that point my race, and just a series of bad luck and bad decisions, but that put us in this position of launching off the castle. I don't know if you saw that footage. I launched off this castle that night and got a 70-1 glide in this sky that was just, you knew it was going to unleash at any moment, and it did as soon as my feet hit the ground. I just had this insane glide, and covered a bunch of ground.
Nice.
and almost caught up with you guys in terms of the distance kind of thing. Lori was right there, and so we'd had a pretty good day, even though a lot of it was on the ground. And the next day, it put us into this Worth Pass zone. And I had no idea that's where Firebird used to be. And Robbie Whittle, cut his teeth there. And he used to say that was the most complicated, most dangerous place to fly in the Alps. And because it's just a super convoluted, it's almost like the Furka Grimsel type of scenario where you've got a lot of different passes and a lot of different stuff coming in. That's right before the big jump over to Santis. And it was just fascinating to be up in there. And, I had studied it on Google Earth, and I got in there and literally just couldn't get my head around it. It was just, where are we? Which way are we going? And, it was, but beautiful, stunning, and, chairlifts all over the place. And, it was definitely one of those kind of days where it wasn't very flyable that day. It was pretty nasty, but it was one of those days where you had to just stop every once in a while and go, this is really neat. This is a really cool zone. I don't know if I'll ever be back here.
Exactly. It's just mind-numbingly beautiful, stunning. And by the way, I also got lost. I didn't know exactly where to go. When I got to Arlberg Pass, there were so many little canyons or valleys that I could go through. It's like, okay, wait a second. I studied these. Why can't I figure it out? So you said it's a labyrinth. That was the perfect description, because it was like that. But now I have to say that us not being from the Alps, obviously are a little more foreign to all those nuances. But how we try to get through that is not only Google Earth or just checking maps, but we also tried more on a simulation based. So with a VR headset and flying a glider in a simulation.
Wow.
We actually
How do you do that?
Traversed the route. I think I did that route 2 or 3 times.
How do you do that in Google Earth, but with VR, or how do you
do it? You can do it in Google Earth. However, the app just gets you dizzy. So there is this piece of software. It's a simulator, really. It's called a Condor simulator. They use it a lot for sailplanes. So you're really flying a sailplane. So you cannot really learn how to fly an area, because also the weather models.
You can see it.
But you can see it, exactly. So the topography and the textures used are actually ultra realistic. So you can really learn all the nuances, the little spots, the little hills in front that might be triggers, or you fly on the high side and how that connects to the next valley and everything. You can do it on a 2D screen, obviously, but if you really want the immersive experience, you can get like an Oculus 2 headset and just fly with that. And you're sitting in a cabin, right? You're sitting in your glider and you're just flying around doing circles. You still have the thermal, even though the weather model is very simplistic, doesn't have valley winds, and you see a cloud and you're going up, kind of thing. So it's not that difficult. Let's say it's a really good tool to learn the topography. And at least in my case, we explore the fact that we don't have a lot of big mountains here. And for me, the psychology aspect of being immersed in only, probably our highest mountain that we fly here is 1,000 meters, and 1,500 meters is the highest that we have in the area that we fly kind of regularly. So you being in front of walls that are 1,000 meters high, and then the peaks are another 1,000 meters, and you are already 1,000 meters high. So that psychology, it can be really intimidating for someone who's not in that world. So if you use virtual reality, you can get past that threshold where now you feel confident about flying among such scenery and such big mountains.
When you came into this one, you talked a little bit about increasing the volume on your training to the extent that you could because you were working. But did you come in? I remember in my first, my going into 2015, I was terrified initially before the race because I hadn't done. You had done the X-Pier twice or once before before the X Alps. So you had some serious hike and fly experience. I had none. I was just going in kind of cold. So I had done all the physical training, but I was just terrified in terms of, am I just going to be totally left in the dust? Am I going to get eliminated? I really had no idea what to expect. So I'm assuming you came in with a little more confidence than I did because you'd had those X-Pier experiences, but what was the frame of mind difference between the first one and the second one? Because your first one, I can't remember exactly where you placed. 16th?
16th,
I think,
yes, behind Nick,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so it was you had a really good race and lots of fun. Unfortunately, you were with me. We were in that gaggle that didn't make it to Monaco, but it was a very, by comparison standards, insanely tame compared to 2021. We had you had that gust front experience, but we had hardly any wind. We didn't have any firn. We didn't have much weather other than, in the middle of the race, we had a lot of that rain and, it wasn't very thermic, but I wouldn't say it was scary, whereas this one was really scary. But how did going into the two races, did you feel a lot more confident? Did you feel different? Did you feel, what were your goals going into this one?
I definitely changed the goals in this one. 2019, I was more worried about, how am I going to be competing against this crowd? And I was I would call it more uptight or more anxious about how that would play out. 2021, I knew I was going to be able to keep up, and I knew the pace that everyone had. So that was, I think, one of the big shocks in 2019. I was just surprised about the insane fast pace that everyone had. There was no weak team. Everyone was pulling at the same speed. So 2021, I was prepared for that, and I knew that I was going to be able to keep up. So what I try to do is remove the anxiety and say, you know what, guys, let's have fun. Let's try to have fun and do the best we can. That's all we can, because obviously we had a lot more challenges with COVID, and everyone was kind of on edge, and will this happen or not? So I said, you know what, let's take it easy. Let's try to have fun. And that was our approach. Obviously, some days were not as fun with all the weather that we actually had. And, the scary situations that we were immersed in. But that was a different approach for sure.
What was the scariest situation you had? Was there a standout or maybe scariest or worst? I don't know.
That situation around IMSS, that was up there, but that was only a part of the flight. After that, it was fine. Before that, it was fine. And it was not a long flight. I think it was only 50K. Where I had a lot more opportunity to get scared was on the flight from Verbier to Bellinzona. So we started the day, we knew that the Northern was going to be around 7 to 8 or even higher hectopascals.
Yeah,
So
scary.
we knew that it was a risky decision to actually go north, but I felt a lot more confident of taking the north route because I know the Sion Valley and I know that the mountains are high. So as long as we stay high, it shouldn't be much of a problem. What I didn't take into account was that we were going to have 50 km/h winds from the northwest. And the mountains on the other side of the Rhone Valley, let's say the Mont, Jungfrau, Eiger, Massif on the other side, was, in my opinion, going to block a lot of that air. Well, that definitely didn't happen. So I tried to stay high. We did a few hops in the morning. We started early. It was classic hike and fly. It was beautiful. Just practicing that in Switzerland is just gorgeous because you launch and now you land on the next ridge. You hike up again another 300 meters. You do that again and keep doing it until conditions get good. And now that you have some altitude, now you can actually go to the south faces on the north side of the valley. But at this point, I was feeling really tired, and it was shaded on the south side. So once the sun started hitting me, once I started transitioning to the north side of the Rhone Valley, with this warmth, I just went to bed. I just fell asleep, and I'm not talking about closing your eyes for 5 seconds and then startled, just regain control again. No, I'm talking about deep sleep. I was dreaming, actually.
Whoa.
I was probably out
Wow.
for 1 minute or minute and a half. I was dreaming that I was back in Mexico and my mother was actually cooking food for me. All of a sudden, I start feeling that something is hitting me, and I wake up, and now I'm close to the actual faces, huge faces, and by this point I'm in Leukerbad, in that valley. Yeah. And it's hail, big hail coming down. So I cover my instruments because I think that they are going to get broken. But the hail doesn't let up, and it just starts getting louder and louder. So now I look up to my wing, and I just hope that this hail is not going to puncture the wing, and I'm going to be falling from the sky. So I just want to get out of there quickly. And by the way, I'm trembling at this point because it's just so cold. Because now I'm under the cloud. So I press bar, get out of there as soon as I can. So after 2 minutes, hail just subsides and now everything's fine. But now I'm heading to these big faces, and we have the northern really acting on at this point, as well as the northwest wind. So I am heading into a big, nasty trap, and I don't know about it. But I do see an eagle that is probably 100 meters in front or 200 meters in front, 50 feet below me. And then I see this eagle in seconds, 200 feet above me. I'm like, okay, hang on. The rodeo is coming,
it's
right?
It's going to come.
And the eagle was all out of shape, right? So it was like, if that eagle is not really maintaining the wings open, I hope I have good luck on this one. So I hit the thermal, and whack, it's just the wing disappears, totally disappears. After seconds, it just comes forward, but it has a huge cravat. At this point, I don't think we can call it a cravat. It was like completely in on the right side. So as you can imagine, it just starts winding and winding and winding quick. And I don't have much control at this point. So I'm thinking about throwing the reserve, but I'm not going to do it with that rotation. So I need to stop the rotation first.
Yeah.
So I buried the left brake. I stalled the wing. So now I'm falling, and I look down. I still have some altitude to play around and try to save it. So I release hands up, wing comes up, and now it's only 30% in. So like, okay, this is more manageable. Weight shift, brake on the open side, pump the outer, and it releases, and now I'm flying again. So I start thermaling after that. And now I start feeling the effects of the northwest wind. There was not a second that I could actually stay in the thermal without feeling the texture in the air, huge textures between 2 meters per second to 4 meters per second. And then I'm sinking on the next half of the circle at 3 meters per second. So every single meter was gained with huge lift and then huge sink. So it was a combination of fun and the northwest wind, and actually was a very good lapse rate because, I mean, if you see hail, there's a lot of energy in the air, but that energy is being revolted down on the ground, and that nastiness is just coming up and it's hitting you. So I get in contact with my team because now I'm at FISP and I have to make a decision whether I can stay on the northern route towards Andermatt, or I should cross Simplon Pass towards Domodossola. So they get back to me and say, weather for tomorrow is definitely better on the south. So now you can cross. And by the way, this is the reason why I decided on the northern route. I was definitely more confident on the Sion Valley because I knew it, but also I could actually divert at this point without being less efficient, take that southern route or keep on the northern route. If you take the southern route, there's no way you can go to the northern route. So if you get stuck down there, you pretty much have to traverse all those boonies that are south of the Matterhorn, Dufourspitze, etc. Yep. So now I'm heading towards Simplon Pass, well, a little bit to the east of Simplon Pass, but I look at my speed and it's 90 kilometers an hour without bar. So I know that big mountains are coming. And
you're going to take a spanking.
Yes. So I see this huge wall. I don't remember the name of the mountain, but I was probably 3,200 meters and I'm just cruising. I'm just whoosing by. I get to the peak a little bit after it and the sink starts. It was not rowdy, but I was going down at 8 meters per second. 4, 6, 8, all the way almost to the ground.
So you're on the south side now. You've cleared the Simplon or wherever you went across.
Correct.
You're on. Okay.
So I'm on the south side. I'm a little bit north of Domodossola, and pretty much I'm looking at crossing that last ridge. The Domodossola Valley takes you to Locarno, where Lago Maggiore is. So the problem with that route is the
airspace.
Exactly, the airspace, and normally how you fly it is on the north side. But with this northwest wind, there was no chance that I can take the north side without bumping into the airspace. So I have to take the southern route, but not after saucering and flying backwards for at least, I would say, 10 kilometers, just trying to gain altitude again after the huge sink. So I was almost at the ground, but I'm saucering. When I point into the wind, I'm going backwards 10 kilometers an hour, but it lifts still. And then I go down, saucer, all the way to the last ridge, where now I'm put in this little canyon with only a river. There were absolutely no landing zones down there, for sure. But somehow I was clear in my mind. I was not worried. I just wanted to figure out the situation because now I didn't feel any northwest because I was low enough. But now I was feeling the wind coming down from the high mountains on the east. So once I figured that out, I soared the western face and then got out of there and kept on going. It was one of those situations in the Exiles where your brain is so used to flying in these conditions that you're rising above it.
It's all making sense.
Exactly. You start making sense out of this. Your body's like, no worries. We'll just keep on going. So now my team tells me that I need to get to a certain height to cross Lago Maggiore without a problem. I get to that altitude, we cross it, and now it's almost the end of the day, and I'm heading to Bellinzona on the south side. And as you know, the airspace, and this is the reason why people fly the north side, because the airspace on the south side
is impossible.
Encroaches you to the mountain. Right. But hey, I never flown there. I have no clue. So I just keep on going until I notice that it's a little too late to find a landing zone because the west wind is pushing me and I'm not penetrating west again. So I'm heading towards this trap, this literal trap. No landing zones against the mountain. So I have two options, airspace or tree. So I just keep on going. I say, you know what? I'll find something. I'll figure something out. So my brain is still trying to figure out.
That's a very treed area. I know this part of the world really well. That was Bellinzona is a place I've flown a ton, and the south side is all trees, thick trees,
big trees. Exactly. So there was
big
no
trees,
clearing,
big thick trees. There's no clearings. There's no openings. There's no wow.
Nothing at
What'd you
all.
do?
But I didn't know that. So I just kept going to see if the trees were actually blocking a small landing zone that I was not seeing from afar. So I just keep on going. I'm getting lower on top of the trees. Like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to figure it out once I get to the end. So the airspace, I was literally 5 meters from the airspace. Okay. And I finally see
the CTR, the bad one, the one that goes all the way to the ground there. Right?
It was past the CTR.
There's the wings on.
It was past the CTR. So there is a hope.
So you're in one of the wings.
Because the steps actually are a little bit higher every single, I think it's 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. So the step that I got to, now that opened up a small gap between the airspace and the treetops. But the landing zone that I found was a tiny thing that was below airspace. So I didn't really know if I was going to be able to just go to the treetops and then scoot under the airspace and then land. So I was like, you know what? This is my only option. So let me try it. And so I park it into the wind. So I'm facing west. My wingtip is 5 meters from the airspace, literally, because I zoomed in my instruments all I could. And I could see that any small movement changed the line. You know, it's like, oh, okay. So I'm 4 meters. No, 3 meters. Okay. No, the other way. So now I'm sinking on top of the trees. I'm going down to the trees. I just see the trees coming up and I don't see the airspace in my instrument letting up. It's like, you know what? Might be a tree line. So I just keep going down. And at the last second, literally, I probably had 20 meters that I can scoot under the airspace and then
oh my God,
5 seconds later land.
Yeah. No way. That's awesome. No way. I had that exact flight. I started in Bellinzona in 2015 and ended in Orsières, which is right across the pass from Verbier. So you did the reverse. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I didn't take the Simplon. I was a little bit north of that, kind of between the Simplon and the Newfoundland, but going the other way. And I was battling a hell of a headwind in 2015. But I watched you on live tracking a lot that day. You just had one. When you decided to go north, I thought you made the biggest mistake. I just thought, man, I don't know. That's, Kriegel did it and he really made it work. But I saw with that North Fern coming, I thought you were just, usually North Fern, it's not very flyable on the north side when it's a strong North Fern because it's low cloud base and rainy and nasty, and that's what got Maxime and all those guys, being on the south in the South Fern day. Kriegel later said he didn't think it was very strong South Fern, but I can tell you when I was I was in the same place as he was, but further north that day when he was having his breakout day. I was trying to get to Fiche on the basically backdooring into Titlis, kind of what we did the year before in 2019. And I could see the South Fern just dumping in over the Andermatt in that area. I mean, it certainly looked like South Fern to me. It was a nasty day. It was, 50K plus at the peak tops and really ugly. But, and those guys were on the south side, whereas, usually when it's South Fern, it's not very flyable on the south side because it's just, you don't have the sun. It's rainy. And so I thought you were putting yourself in a terrible position and you really made it work. That was genius. That was great. And I mean, that's you did about 180K on course line that day, I think, right?
Something like that.
Something like that. It was a big day.
Yes, I was just drained physically and mentally because mountains in Switzerland are not exactly small. So we did a lot of little hops, and the little hops means like you do 800 vert every single time, and then just a mental drain of okay, I need to figure out what to do, right? So I think that was all in all, it was a good day, although it could have turned bad really easy, very easy.
What a breakout day. That must have been so exciting and so fantastic. And I would imagine too, that route doesn't lend itself very easy to the chase. Were you way out ahead of your team? Were they able to stay up with you? Because it's a very roundabout. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, you certainly know what you're talking about because my next comment was going to be, well, my team was 3 hours behind.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah, crushing my team. They can't even keep up.
Yeah, normally when your team cannot keep up with you, it was a good day, for sure.
That's a good day.
For sure.
Yeah, that's a good day.
Yeah.
That's a good day. Eduardo, you mentioned, the kind of, this is what really, it didn't hit me so much in the first couple of races, but it really hit me in 2019 was the lack of, I think compared to the Europeans, you and I compared to North American pilots, you and I have quite a bit of experience in the Alps, but compared to the Europeans, it's just a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2019, it was actually really discouraging. I came out of that race because I really felt like that in a lot of ways was my best race in terms of the decision making and the ground game and the fitness and still, we had one bad day and it just wrecked us in terms of getting to Monaco and stuff. And the bad day was up here. It had nothing to do with the terrain, but it did, there were a number of days before that really it just really came down to local knowledge. Often it was just, I just consistently found myself in places where I really didn't know what to do. And, there's an argument that that's just piloting skills and, you get better as you fly more and, you can figure it out on the fly like Kriegel does. But it was also just, it really struck me that year that, man, we are really at a disadvantage. Just not having the races there and the time and just knowing the lay of the land, because it is a labyrinth. It is a very complicated place. Flying here in the Rockies, you get up and you go east, and there's not, you're not dealing with a lot of fern. You're not dealing a lot with, the valley winds are very predictable. They're not complicated. And anyway, it's a very long way to ask a simple question. Do we have a chance? Do the people that are, hopefully going to follow in our footsteps and, join up for races like the X Pier and the X Alps from over here on this side of the pond? Because I think you were the first non-European this year. I've had a couple of those. Nick Nanens is always a hard one to battle, but for the most part, it's a Europeans race, and certainly at the top 10. Is that discouraging to you? Is it encouraging? Does it bother you?
It can sound discouraging. We still have our experience, and we establish our goals based on that perspective. That we don't know the area, and being happy with your performance means how close you are to your expectations, right? So you have to tame your expectations, but having always expectation that you're going to be outside the top 10 or it's going to be tough to finish can really sound discouraging. Now, if you go back and I've heard in your podcast ex-Alps athletes talking about, well, I don't like to scout. I don't want to scout because I want to fly the day. I want to get to that point and figure it out. And I think that's really valid for people who fly in the Alps, because in my opinion, they already have the database in their subconscious. They've flown around the Alps a lot, so they can extrapolate the situations that they have already been in and apply it to the particular challenge that they have in the route. But we don't have that. I don't fly with a valley system, so I have to figure it out and potentially bomb out at a higher probability than them. So I like the scouting. I feel a lot more encouraged with the scouting. So answer your question, I think it's going to be very tough for a non-Alpine team to actually place top 5. And I'm not saying it's never going to be done, but it's going to take definitely more effort than teams that are already in the Alps, training there and knowing where to fly and where to go, etc.
Yeah, I think another aspect of it is just flat out hours in that kind of endeavor. Until we have, when you look at Kriegel, he went from the X Alps to the Eiger to the Verco he's done over a half a dozen since the end of the race. I haven't done anything, and it's it's I think there's also that aspect of it that, the other side of it is, the young guns that are coming up into this, we didn't have to worry about them too much in 2015.
Mm.
It was an experience thing. And now, these young guys are really good pilots and they really know. And this was a uniquely hard year on the rookies. That was interesting. I thought was really interesting. But typically, the rookies historically have been able to do pretty well. And anyway, that I think it's the other thing that's hard for me emotionally, or because it only happens every 2 years. I come out of this with a ton of takeaways and a ton of things that, okay, I would do this differently and I would change that. And, this year I went in with a ton of mental coaching from Thomas, Kriegel's coach. And I really tried to rejigger my head around, like you said, expectations and goals and all that kind of things. And then you get to try this and then you don't get to try it again for 2 years.
Right. Right.
It's there's a limited time that you can really, anyway, what I'm trying to say is it's hard to improve enough because you've got 30 other people who are improving really well too.
Exactly.
And they're doing it there, and they've got the Dolomiti and the Borns and just so many events that can help sharpen those skills that, we can just do it visually. We can train, but we can't train like that. And I think that was the other thing. I did write this in the article. That was the other thing that I'm just finding, it's tough. I was given a little piece of the goods in 2015, and I came away from that thinking, gosh, with more, if I really put a lot of effort into this, I can hang with these guys. But that hasn't proven correct because they're getting a lot better too.
Yes, and I don't know if it also happens to you, Gavin, but the more races you do, your body gets more resilient, right? So people who race constantly, and I'm not talking only the Alps, but just racing constantly, they are really, really beasts on the ground. Because I felt it. My first Xperia, for example, I walked probably 1/4 of what I walked during this race, and I was completely destroyed. After this race, I saw you at the award ceremony. I was feeling fine, actually. I was perfectly fine. Feet didn't hurt. I was a little bit tired, obviously, but other than that, I was feeling really good. And that does.
No, I was the same. It was exactly. I didn't have any blisters. I did 590K on the ground. I just wanted to keep going. No, you do get more resistant. You get a lot more durable. You get a lot more resilient.
So that's on the body side, and on the flying side, absolutely. In order to compete against that, you have to be living there. There's. I don't think there's any other way to do it.
If you had a different scenario with work and life, would this be something, if you lived in the Alps, say, for example, could you see yourself doing all those and keep doing the X Alps? Is this something you'd love to, in an alternate reality? Is this something you'd love to pursue as a profession? Because a lot of these guys do, a lot, like I said, the top 10, most of them are test pilots. Most of them work in the industry. This is what they do. This is their life.
I can definitely see it just because, again, I love the mountains and I love the sport. It's really a passion. You really have to love it in order to keep putting yourself in these situations. So yes, I think that if I lived there and I had, the resources to just do it as a living, I think it's a high quality of life.
Last question, bud. For those who are listening who have the X Alps as a maybe aspiration, something that they'd like to try to tackle someday, what advice would you have for them? And let me add to that. And I'm trying to ask shorter questions. I'm doing a very terrible job with you. I'm asking very long ones because I'm so passionate about this subject. But I'm always a little I'm surprised. I don't even know what the word would be, but live tracking is phenomenal. I don't get to watch it that much, but that's what everybody tells me, that, you can get in the cockpit and the whole thing. Obviously there isn't the weather aspect. People don't see the weather, but I'm a little nervous just to think what people actually think about the X Alps. Because when you're not in it and not experiencing it, I think people have pretty radically wrong views about what it is and what it isn't.
Do you feel that way? I mean, I run into a lot of people that say, yeah, I just learned how to fly and I'm thinking about doing the XOPS in a couple years, or 4 years. And you just think, yeah, you're batshit. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes, I think we're on the same page there. My recommendation, my advice would be know really well what you're getting into. It's not, there's no glamour. It's not only the media. There's a lot behind the scenes that needs to happen to prepare for this race. Not only from a physical aspect, but flying skills, route, sponsors, transportation. If you're not from the Alps, you have that burden on top of everything. So there is a lot that goes into this, and the problem is that if you go, let's say, half-assed in this case, once you're really prepared, once you know what you're doing fully, you might not get selected because you already burned your ticket. So just be really, really conscientious about getting all the information you can, through podcasts. And I don't want to scare anyone. By the way, I'm just detailing my experience. I love the experience, and this is something that I'm taking as one of the best moments, let's say, in my life, because of the adventure, the challenge, the scenery, the camaraderie, the people that you meet. So it's an awesome adventure. Okay, but really know what you're getting into.
How are you going to fill the hole? What do you? I haven't figured that out. I think about it a lot, and I think about it a lot before the race, knowing that I'm going to be in this, in this place after. I think some of the athletes, Kriegel, and they have filled it by just constantly training and looking forward to the next one. I've talked about this quite a bit on the show, but he talked about going to a pretty dark place after his first two in 2009 and 2011. Because you're pinned. I mean, you are maxed out. You're having one. Whether you're having a bad race like I did for the first few days in this one, or a good race like I did at the end, or whatever. We all have these amazing experiences, but you're pegged, and you're, like you said, your chick sent me high. You're in flow for sure, whether it's good or bad, for 12 days, and then it ends, and then you go back to the East Coast and go back to your work and your job and 9 to 5. And now you guys are trying to find a house. I mean, it all seems, I'm just finished building a place. It all seems a little less exciting than being in that race. How do you think about the future and what's next?
What I've thought about doing is definitely more Volvic. After seeing all this beautiful scenery that I had not known until this race, I want to visit those places again, and probably in a kind of a non-hardcore mode, taking trains here and there, buses, etc. But really going where I want to and exploring the area. It's just huge, and there's many places that I have not visited. So I'm going to take a step back from hike and fly competitions just to be able to explore more. Be more on my own, camping high, and then launching from there and going from, I don't know, Chamonix to Tolmin again, doing that kind of trip. Yes, absolutely. But definitely there's some flying involved. It's just as it's our passion. We really love it. We love the scenery. We love the flying. So, that gap is going to be filled with a lot more flying, just a little bit, toned down.
Any World Cup aspirations and competition type stuff? Because I know you're quite keen on racing as well.
Yes, absolutely. I just came back from pre-PWC, actually, where Maxime was there. We had a nice chat. So yes, definitely competing race to goal, heading down to Monarca, which hopefully I'll see you there, buddy.
Of course, I never miss Monarca.
Yeah, that's an awesome place. So we haven't really defined the schedule. I'm normally traveling with Bianca, and she's she's a lot more into race to well competitions than I am. But it's really fun to actually fly together, experience these competitions together. So definitely, PwC and other race to goal competitions are in our future as well.
Yeah, I got to get her on the show one of these days as well. It's cool. You're one of the few couples who are really making it work. That's very exciting, and she's an awesome pilot. So, hey, Eduardo, before we wrap things up completely here, I'm sure you've got some people you want to thank. This race is not just about us, is it? It's our teams, and they're so critical. But who do you want to put a shout out to?
Absolutely, Gavin. This is not Eduardo Garza going through the Alps. This is Team Mexico, and I know that websites, etc., focus on the name of the person, right? The name of the athlete, but this is a team effort, as you well know. So I would like to thank my whole team. So we have Jason Wallace, aka the Mule, who hiked with me. Oh my goodness. I don't know how he did it, but he was hiking with me all the time. Anton,
always with a smile, knowing Jason
absolutely,
too.
Absolutely. You know him from the Red Frogs. He's an awesome guy.
Awesome.
Driving the van, driving a van, any van in the Alps is quite a hassle. And that was Anton, and also cooking, Anton Salutsky. So complete appreciation to him as well. Now we also had in the team Peter Grice, aka Magic Hands.
Don't go into details. That's fine.
It's on PG-13. He was a massage therapist, and he did a really, really amazing job. He actually works in Switzerland in clusters, so I really envy that part. But he was instrumental in getting us as far as possible down the course line. On the other hand, remotely, we actually had Paul Van Leeuw in Hamburg. So he was in our time zone, and he was feeding us information so readily, timely, and accurate that I was really, really impressed with his work. So,
was that weather? You were getting weather stuff from him?
Weather, what other people were doing, hiking routes. Okay. So he would send us GPX files for us to, traverse efficiently, because sometimes you don't have any signal, or you just don't have time to look for it. So he was doing that, and well, of course, Bianca, who has, always supported me, and in this time, in this race, she was not there with us because I don't know if you know this, but in 2019, up to that point, she had been 4 times U.S. national women's champion, right? So she forfeited that during the 2018 race just to support me, because she missed a couple of one competition that was the nationals. So I didn't want that to happen again. So I was actually pushing for her to come back to the US, just help me on the let's say prologue and that week prior, and then she actually had to go back to the US. So I definitely owe her a lot of this you can call it success that we've had. She's been a huge part of the team, and she was also helping with weather, and it was a lot of moral support. Sometimes you just need someone to talk to when you're walking endlessly. So yes. So I'm very grateful to the whole team. I appreciate everything they did. Oh, and I really want to thank my supporter from such a long time, Skywalk. Because since I started hike and fly competitions, they have always been very supportive of me and my team. So thank you to Arnie Berlin, who, again, has always been supporting me, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Well, Eduardo, what a treat, man. That was fantastic. It was great to catch up with you and see you, and can't wait to see you in Dubai. We didn't talk about Dubai. We've got this crazy race coming up over in United Arab Emirates that looks pretty exciting. I just started training 2 days ago. I think you got a little jump on me there, but yeah, I'm going to get myself in shape in 3 weeks and counting here. So, but we'll see you there, and then we'll see you at Monarca. That'll be great.
Absolutely. Well, Gavin, it's been a real pleasure seeing you, talking to you. And I guess I'll see you soon.
See you soon, bud.
All right, take care.
If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription. And it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.